Imagine an F1 team, right?
I'm picturing it.
They are spending, I don't know, $20 million wind testing their car in a state-of-the-art tunnel.
Oh, optimizing every single square inch of downforce.
Exactly. But then right before the starting lights go out, the mechanics just guess the tire pressure by kicking the rubber with their boots.
That is just mathematically absurd.
It is. But that level of absurdity is exactly what professional golfers are doing every single week on the putting green.
Yeah, it's a structural blind spot that honestly defies all logic in modern sports. I mean, we are looking at a glaring contradiction in elite performance programs today.
Right, and that brings us to the sources we're diving into today. They introduced this concept called the precision gap, alongside a physics-based framework known as puddle-eyes.
And the overarching theme here is that the golf industry has permitted this massive, really massive strategic imbalance.
Because players are hyper-optimizing one end of the golf course, but leaving literally millions of dollars on the table at the other end.
All due to, well, an outdated reliance on total guesswork.
So our mission today is to completely transform how you, the listener, look at the game of golf. We want to take putting, which, has historically been treated as this mystical, intuitive art form.
Like pure magic.
Exactly. And break it down into unforgiving kinetic physics.
Because by the end of this deep dive, you are going to understand why the most critical club in the bag is also the most misunderstood.
But quickly, before we really get into the weeds, I want to mention something. If you enjoy these deep dives, please subscribe to our channel. It really helps us continue making this kind of content.
It absolutely does.
And if you want to actually know more about the partner program, just shoot me an email. I will personally contact you. We can talk all about puddle-eyes so you can understand how to shave a few putts off your own round.
Or you can just go listen to our deep dive from about 10 days ago.
Oh yeah, where I explained everything about distance control. You can definitely learn a lot from that one. But, we're broadcasting from Switzerland here on our channel, and we really appreciate your support.
We really do. So to fully grasp why putting needs this scientific revolution, we need to examine the staggering discrepancy in how golfers treat the start of a hole versus the end of a hole.
The contrast is just wild.
It is. The technical sophistication gap is where this entire framework begins.
Think about the driver for a second. If you talk to an elite player, or even like a highly dedicated amateur, they don't just know their driver, they have a forensic understanding of it.
Oh, absolutely. They stand on the driving range hooked up to these massive launch monitors.
Using Doppler radar. They measure swing speed, ball speed, smash factor, the spin axis. Every single variable is calibrated to extract every possible millimeter of carry distance.
They know exactly what optimal looks like for their unique biomechanics. The driver has been fully quantified at this point.
Right.
The industry has spent decades and countless millions in R&D to engineer the exact millisecond the driver face meets the golf ball.
It's basically a triumph of physics working perfectly with human movement.
Exactly. But then, when that same player walks onto the green, the science just evaporates.
It vanishes. You could ask that exact same player, the one who just gave you a literal dissertation on the aerodynamic drag of their driver head, what the loft is on their putter.
And you get nothing.
Total silence.
Yeah.
Or you ask, what's the lie angle? Why did you choose that specific shaft stiffness for your stroke?
They don't know. They have no idea what shaft is in their putter, why it's there, or what model actually helps them aim better. Like blade versus mallet putters. That's fundamentally a question of how you aim.
Right, and it's incredible. Nobody actually knows how their putter is built.
And the sources highlight a statistic that puts this ignorance into stark perspective. The putter accounts for nearly 40% of all strokes in a given round.
40%.
It is, by a massive margin, the most frequently used tool in the bag. Yet players cannot define the basic specifications of the club.
Let alone understand how those uncalibrated variables interact with the speed of the green.
Exactly.
But wait, I have to play devil's advocate here. I want to challenge this. We've all watched the greats on Sunday afternoons. You hear commentators romanticize a player's soft touch or Tiger Woods' legendary feel.
Sure, the art of the putt.
Yeah. Are our sources seriously arguing that relying on human perception and feel is just a mechanical failure?
They're arguing that relying solely on human perception is the root cause of this performance gap.
Really? Solely on perception.
Yes. When you rely entirely on feel, you are substituting measurable, repeatable precision for subjective perception. Think about what happens under the immense pressure of professional competition.
Well, adrenaline spikes.
Adrenaline spikes, fatigue sets in, nerves completely fray. Human perception is highly volatile in those moments.
But physics is not.
Physics never changes, and the framework we are analyzing insists that we must transition away from viewing pudding as an intuitive exercise. We have to start treating it as a physical system governed by energy and mechanics.
Okay, I'm tracking with that. But let's look at the brain-body connection the sources mention, because they break this down into a three-step process.
Right, the perceptual cycle.
Yeah, first, your brain takes in the visual data, so the slope, the distance, the grain of the grass. Second, your brain translates that data into a specific motor pattern. And third, your body executes that movement.
Yeah.
That really seems like a system that requires feel.
It requires proprioception, certainly. You need body awareness. But the physical system breaks down if the tool at the end of your hands isn't calibrated.
Okay.
Let's actually define what calibration means in this context, because it's the absolute heart of the put-a-lies approach.
That's it.
Calibration is the mechanical process of removing the variables that force a player's brain to guess.
So eliminating the unknowns.
Precisely. If you do not know your putter's exact loft or lie, your brain is subconsciously guessing how the ball will react at impact. You've introduced an unknown variable at the exact moment of energy transfer.
That makes so much sense. Think about the last time you played. You hit a putt that felt perfect. It came right off the center of the club face, but it inexplicably jumped to the right and you missed the cup.
And what did you do?
I threw my hands up and blamed a bumpy green. Everyone does.
Of course. But what this framework is telling us is that it probably wasn't the green.
Oh, wow.
It was your uncalibrated putter launching the ball improperly from the very first millisecond.
Which brings us to the micromechanics of the green. The text provides this great scenario of a 5-meter putt, which is roughly, 16 feet?
About 16 feet, yeah.
So if we freeze time at the exact millisecond of impact, we can deconstruct what is actually happening between the club face and the ball.
And the two most critical elements at that frozen moment are the putter's lie angle and its loft.
Let's tackle the lie angle first. Because the lie is just the angle of the putter's shaft relative to the ground, right?
Exactly. If your lie angle is incorrect for your specific posture, the putter does not sit flush on the grass.
So either the toe, which is the far end of the club head, or the heel, the part closest to your feet, is sitting slightly lower than the rest of the face.
Right. And if the toe is sitting lower, what happens?
Well, it's going to dig into the grass first. And if the toe catches the turf at impact, it acts like a pivot point. The club face violently twists open or closed.
Exactly the issue. A miscalibrated lie angle means you are fighting the turf before you even strike the ball.
Wow.
The actual mechanical calibration involves physically bending the neck or hosel of the putter using specialized tools so that when you take your natural stance, the sole of the club rests perfectly flat.
Okay, so once the lie is perfectly flat, we have to address the loft, which always sounds like an oxymoron to me. Loft on a putter. We're on a flat surface.
Right.
Why on earth do we need the ball to launch upward?
Well, because a golf ball on a green is never actually resting on a perfectly flat surface.
What do you mean?
It has weight, right,
Hey.
which means it settles into a microscopic depression in the grass.
Oh, I never thought about that.
Yeah, if your putter had 0 degrees of loft, you would be driving the ball directly down into the turf. The putter needs a precise amount of loft to lift the ball out of that tiny depression.
And this creates what the sources call the airborne phase.
Exactly.
The ball actually flies.
It flies only for a fraction of a second, but it flies. And the duration of that flight is dictated entirely by the loft.
Okay, so if the loft is too high,
The ball flies too far, lands hard, and bounces.
and if it's too low,
It drives into the grass and pops up unpredictably.
I love the bowling analogy for this. Think of a heavy bowling ball. When you throw it down the lane, it doesn't immediately start rolling end over end the second it hits the wood.
Right, it lands and then it slides.
Yes. It skids down the oiled surface before the friction finally catches. And only then does it transition to a true forward roll. A golf ball does the exact same thing.
It launches out of its depression, lands, skids, and then rolls.
And the entire... So what if the put-a-lies framework hinges on controlling that skid phase?
It absolutely does. Uncontrolled skid is the enemy of putting.
But why is skid so chaotic? I mean, it's just sliding forward.
Because skid is pure, unpredictable friction. When the ball is sliding rather than rolling end over end, it is incredibly susceptible to the microenvironment of the green.
Meaning little imperfections.
Exactly. A single spike mark, a slightly longer blade of grass, or even just the direction the grass is growing, the grain will violently deflect a skidding ball.
Oh, so it knocks it right off its line.
Yes. But a ball that is in a true forward roll cuts right through those imperfections.
So the mechanical process of calibration, bending the lie angle flat and adjusting the loft to create that perfect microscopic launch, minimizes the skid.
You are forcing the ball to transition into a stable end-over-end roll much earlier in its journey. You are taking a highly chaotic physical interaction and engineering it into a repeatable sequence of events.
Swapping unpredictable friction for predictable geometry. I love that.
That's exactly what it is.
But if the ball is transitioning to a true roll faster, that means it's holding its line better. But hitting a perfectly straight putt doesn't matter if it blows 3 feet past the hole.
No, it doesn't.
Which leads to why distance control actually changes the physical geometry of the cup. The text makes this profound statement. When speed is correct, line becomes secondary.
Yes, and that introduces the concept of effective hole size, which is perhaps the most important strategic takeaway from all these sources.
Explain that, because it sounds crazy at first.
Well, we think of a golf hole as being a static 4¼ inches in diameter, always. But the laws of physics dictate that the hole is only that wide if the ball arrives at the perfect speed.
Let's break down the gravity of that, literally the gravity.
Right. If a ball is rolling at what we call dying speed, just fast enough to reach the edge and drop over gravity, has plenty of time to act on it. The ball can enter from the dead center, or it can catch the extreme left edge or the extreme right edge, and it will still fall in. You are utilizing the entire 4.25 inches of the cup.
But if your putter is uncalibrated and you generate too much skid, your distance control is fundamentally flawed.
Exactly.
So if that ball arrives at the hole rolling too fast, gravity simply doesn't have the time to pull the mass of the ball downward before its forward momentum carries it right over the gap.
A fast-moving ball will just lip out or skip right over the edge. It must strike the dead center of the hole to have any chance of hitting the back of the cup and dropping.
So by arriving too fast, you have effectively shrunk the physical size of the hole.
You've made a 4¼ inch target into a 2-inch target.
That is wild. By having precise distance control, which requires a calibrated true roll, which requires knowing your putter's exact loft and lie, you are literally making the hole bigger.
You are buying yourself a margin of error.
You could misread the break by ½ inch, but if your speed is perfectly calibrated, the ball still drops.
The margin for error increases dramatically. And that brings us to the economic payoff we mentioned earlier. Because the stakes here are not just a few strokes.
No, we're talking about serious money.
The sources assert that this level of variance reduction makes shaving off 1 putt per round an entirely realistic goal.
And 1 putt per round sounds almost insignificant to a weekend player. Like, sure, I shoot an 89 instead of a 90.
Right, but at the elite level.
Let's put real numbers to this based on the claims in our sources about the millions left on the table. Think about the dominant players right now.
Okay.
If a player like Scotty Scheffler, who, he had a historic season last year, if he had just 1 less putt per round, the math suggests he would have earned roughly $20 million more over the year.
$20 million from 1 less putt per round.
Yes. Or look at a player further down the rankings, like Matty Schmid. Earning around $3 million is an incredible living. But with 1 less putt per day, let me guess, he jumps to $6 million. He literally doubles his earnings.
The financial leverage of a single stroke on the putting green is astronomical. 1 less putt on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday means 4 fewer strokes for the tournament.
And over a 20-tournament season, that equates to a massive leap up the leaderboard every single week.
And it begs a really uncomfortable question for the industry. I really wonder if the absolute best player in the world actually knows what their putter's launch angle is for a specific green speed.
Or are they just out there trusting their hands?
The evidence suggests the vast majority are still just trusting their hands.
Which is mind-blowing.
It is. This represents a total paradigm shift in how elite golf training must be approached in the future. The focus cannot remain solely on endlessly practicing a stroke based on intuition.
It has to shift toward engineering the physical interaction between the club face and the ball. It's just wild to observe the evolution of this sport. We have athletes today who are stronger, faster, and more biomechanically tuned than any generation in history.
Oh, athletes in peak physical condition.
Right. And they swing drivers that look like they were designed by aerospace engineers, launching the ball into the stratosphere with pinpoint accuracy.
But then they get to the green.
The specific patch of grass where the millions are actually made, and they pull out a piece of uncalibrated metal that they do not fully understand.
Because it looks cool or it feels good, it is the ultimate paradox of modern golf optimization.
Yeah.
But it also represents the next great frontier. The players who recognize this structural blind spot, the ones who embrace the physics of loft, launch, skid, and roll, are the ones who are going to capture those unexploited performance margins.
Let's bring all of this together. We started this deep dive looking at an F1 team guessing their tire pressure, which perfectly mirrors the golfer obsessing over their driver while entirely ignoring the physics of their putter.
A perfect analogy.
We deconstructed the romantic idea of feel, revealing how it actually masks mechanical failures and uncontrolled skid. We learned how physical calibration, adjusting the lie to prevent twisting and tuning the loft to control the airborne phase, creates a stable, true roll.
And we discovered that true roll is the absolute secret to distance control.
Right, which physically increases the effective size of the hole and secures those millions of dollars in potential earnings we just talked about.
This framework leaves us with a fundamental shift in perspective. It challenges the very core of how players evaluate their performance.
How so?
Well, the real question you should be asking yourself on the green is not, how good is my stroke?
It's deeper than that.
Much deeper. The real question is, do you actually understand what your ball does after impact?
That is a brilliant way to reframe the entire game. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Whether you're teeing it up this weekend or just fascinated by the hidden physics of everyday life, keep questioning the things that everyone else takes for granted.
Sometimes the biggest blind spots are hiding right there in plain sight.
So true. We'll see you next time.